Everybody get up, it's time to slam now. We got the real jam going down. Welcome to the Space Jam. Here's your chance, do your dance at the Space Jam. All right.
The image on the left is a healthy brain, full, even, symmetrical activity. Color doesn't mean anything, it's the shape. The image on the right, you can see all the holes, especially in the back half of the brain. And so I went to this lecture, I got really excited because imaging plus psychiatry, it's what created a revolution in my life. So over the next 24 years, my colleagues in IDAMN clinics have now built the world's largest database of brain scans related to behavior. So now the images just taught me so much. So here are two SPECT scans, healthy one on the left. So SPECT tells us three things: good activity, too little, or too much. So the image on the left, all you're looking at is the shape, and it's looking at blood flow, and we want it to be full, even, and symmetrical. The image on the right is showing us the really active areas in the brain, which are typically in the back, in an area called the cerebellum. Traumatic brain injury. And one of the big early lessons I learned was that mild traumatic brain injury ruins people's lives, and nobody knows because they go to see psychiatrists that never look at their brain. And so the NFL actually formed its concussion committee in 1994, but they never sponsored a brain imaging study. So you have to ask yourself if they really wanted to know the answer to the question, which we'll talk about in a little bit. So this is what we see with OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder. See, the front part of the brain works so hard, you can't stop thinking. Or this is somebody who has post-traumatic stress disorder. Their emotional brain works way too hard. So I said all of that to get to this slide. This is the most exciting lesson I've learned from looking at 115,000 scans on people from all over the world. You are not stuck with the brain you have. You can make it better, and I can prove it. And I love that. So let's talk about the NFL just for a little bit. Football season started last night, and our announcer here is actually the voice of the Dallas Cowboys. I played football in high school. Well, I've loved football. But I began seeing, did you know your brain is really soft, about the consistency of soft butter? And your skull is really hard and it has multiple sharp bony ridges. And so I began seeing football players, high school players, college players, and then professional players, and nearly all of them had evidence of brain damage. And as I said, the NFL formed its concussion committee in 1994, but it never sponsored an imaging study. Instead, and I'm serious when I said this, they studied rats. They put little tiny helmets on rats. And they would whack them in the head repeatedly. And then they go, well, we just don't know if playing football causes long-term brain damage. The commissioner said that in front of Congress. And Maxine Waters, the congresswoman from Los Angeles, smacks him and says, Commissioner, acting like you are studying brain damage in football is a conflict of interest. It's like the tobacco companies saying they're studying lung cancer. So stop lying. In 2007, Anthony Davis came to my clinic. He's the Hall of Fame running back from USC. He played 8 years in the NFL, and his brain looked very damaged. And on the program I put him on, much like what I'm going to tell you, he got dramatically better. And Anthony is the sweetest, most outgoing person, and he wrote the commissioner a letter who didn't write back, but then he got me to speak at the Retired NFL Players Association. And I was horrified by what I saw. The level of depression, dementia, one player, and a player that I'd idolized growing up in LA, he was a Los Angeles Ram. He asked me the same question in the lecture 6 times, and I was just horrified. And I thought, somebody's got to do an imaging study. And then, of course, I have the voice in my head that said, well, why don't you do it? You have technology, you have experience. So we did it. So the problem with the NFL's position, and I'm dead serious when I say this, is if you don't admit you have a problem, you can't do anything to solve it. So, if you have a problem in your life or in your marriage or in your business, the first way to solve it is go, help, I have a problem. So brain damaged players were left without help or hope, and then everybody knows what's happened. We had players like Junior Seau, shoot themselves in the chest so they could donate their brain, or Dave Dewerson, or it's just a nightmare. So we started and did the world's first and largest imaging study. The images changed everything. So here is our first published study on 100 players, and we said, hey, guess what, guys? There's global damage in football players' brains. But I'm a clinical psychiatrist, so I have great respect for researchers, but that's not my gig. My gig is changing people's lives. And so when we started our study, and I paid for this study, I went, uh-oh. We have to do a second arm of the study. Can we make these bad brains better? And so I put them on a program, the same one I'm going to tell you, which is brain envy, you got to care. You need to stop doing this. Smoking pot is not going green. One of my players actually said, well, I thought that was going green. Half of our players were obese, and so we actually had an NFL weight loss group where, they ended up losing thousands of pounds. It was really awesome. And we put them on nutrients, much like EHT. So here's an example. Duval Love was an offensive guard for the Rams for 12 years. He's morbidly obese. His brain looked awful, awful, awful. I'll show you the before and after in a little bit. So we published this study. 80% of our players show improvement. You are not stuck with the brain you have. You can make it better. Especially in memory, attention, mood, sleep, and blood flow to the brain. So here's Duval's brain, before and after. You are not stuck with the brain you have. You can make it better. You just have to be a warrior. You have to be serious about it. So this is me. I always felt like I was 4 years old standing next to these people. But he's 110 pounds lighter because he cares. And one of my favorite players, you'll recognize him, Freddie Dreyer, played for the Rams, who was on Hunter. He said, with the treatments, I'd replaced a part of me that had slipped away. Going through the program, I noticed mental energy and thinking speed that he had lost. He was not stuck with what he had. He made it better. Okay. This next piece is really important. And in Miriam's EHT product, it's not just EHT. And there's a reason for that. And when I went after our NFL group, we didn't do a single mechanism product. Your brain gets sick in multiple ways, so it will get better in multiple ways. So assessment, optimize your numbers, better in multiple ways. So for example, we use omega-3 fatty acids to decrease inflammation and improve your mood. I love ginkgo and vinpocetine because they increase blood flow and memory. Probiotics support gut health. We talked about that a little bit. B vitamins and phosphatidylserine for nutrient loading. Huperzine A, which is in Miriam's product, boosts acetylcholine. And EHT for tau protein and brain cell structure support. So as I've learned about EHT, I started taking it, because I know with my NFL players, some of you may have heard of this thing called CTE, or chronic traumatic encephalopathy, that their dementia is not at all like Alzheimer's disease. It's actually a tauopathy, or a problem with tau. So tau is the cellular structure. So it's the protein building block to keep your brain cells strong and the mechanisms inside the cell working. So EHT helps to support that. Well, they've actually isolated EHT, which optimizes, Dr. Stock is going to talk about PP2A and how exciting that is, but it keeps your connection strong, supports memory, focus, energy, and your immune system. So it's very exciting, and the Miriam product actually has a number of other nutrients to work in this multiple mechanism approach that I talked about. Untreated ADD or ADHD is one of my specialties. There's a lot of misinformation about it. It's real, and when left untreated, it ruins people's lives. The hallmark symptoms: short attention span, easily distracted, disorganized, procrastinate, and impulsive. And there's a higher incidence of people who have it, who get divorced, who file for bankruptcy, who go to jail, who lose their jobs. And if you have these symptoms, and not every once in a while, because all of us have them every once in a while, but they've been sort of the story of your life, and your teacher said, he's really smart, but only if he tried harder, or she should not talk so much, that it's really worth getting it assessed and treated. And as far as I know, I think we're the best place in the world to do that.